Tonight, we drift toward that familiar shoreline where the day loosens its grip and your thoughts begin to float rather than march. The room stays the same, but your mind starts to treat it like a distant place. Breath becomes a quiet metronome, and the small sounds around you, air moving through vents, a far-off car, the hush of fabric, turn soft at the edges. You don't need to follow any of it, because sleep is already doing the following for you. Long before anyone could name neurons or measure brain waves, people noticed this nightly crossing. They woke with strange images in their hands, as if they had been traveling, and for thousands of years they wondered what kind of world the mind visited when the body stayed behind. Inside your skull, a gentle handover begins. Systems that help you plan, judge, and keep track of minutes grow less insistent, while older rhythms, those that guide rest and repair, take their turn at the wheel. Scientists describe this early descent as a shift in balance, from outward attention to inward processing. As the gates of focus narrow, fewer signals from the outside are treated as urgent, and more of the brain's activity becomes private and self-made. This is the first hint of why dreams can feel like they arrive from nowhere. When the mind is no longer anchored tightly to incoming sights and sounds, it has freedom to combine fragments, memories, worries, faces, places, into new scenes that do not have to obey daytime rules. Sleep is not one smooth drop, but a gentle cycling through different depths. Over the night, you move through patterns that tend to repeat, often in loops of roughly an hour and a half, like slow tides returning to shore. Not every dream is vivid, and not every dream waits for the deepest part of the night. Many people dream in lighter sleep as well, but the most story-like, emotional dreams often appear during a phase called REM sleep, when the eyes flicker beneath closed lids and the brain becomes surprisingly active. During a REM, the body is kept safely still, even as the mind seems to roam. Researchers believe this quiet paralysis helps protect sleep, so you can explore inner landscapes without acting them out in the physical world. As the night goes on, REM periods often grow longer, and dreams can stretch and deepen, especially toward morning. But even now, at the beginning, the mind is already practicing its gentle art of making meaning from loose threads. Tonight, you don't need to solve what dreams mean or hold on to them like messages. You can simply notice that the mind, when given darkness and time, is a natural storyteller. And as you settle further, the storyteller grows quieter, not louder. The scenes become gentler, the edges blur, and the world slows until it is easy to let yourself be carried. Tonight, as you rest, it can be comforting to remember that dreaming is not a modern hobby of the mind. It is an ancient companion, older than writing, older than maps, older than the names we give to sleep. In the earliest cities, people woke with images that felt important, and they tried to treat those images with care. In Mesopotamia, Scribes pressed symbols into clay, and among records of trade and law, there were also notes about dreams and what they might foretell. Across the Nile, Egyptians kept lists of dream themes with simple explanations beside them, as if the night had its own gentle grammar. A dream of clear water might be read one way, a dream of muddy water another, not because anyone could prove it, but because patterns felt soothing. In many places, dreams were taken as messages from gods, ancestors, or the hidden order of the world. To wake from a powerful dream was to feel briefly visited, as though someone had whispered through the dark. And yet, even then, people noticed something else. Dreams did not arrive clean and consistent. They arrived mixed, emotional, stitched from ordinary life into impossible scenes, like a familiar street turning into a shoreline without warning. The Greeks built stories around this mystery, and some traveled to healing temples to sleep in sacred rooms, hoping for a dream that would bring guidance. Later, writers tried to catalog dreams more carefully, noticing that the same symbols could feel different depending on the dreamer's life. All of it points to a simple truth. The waking mind wants dreams to be orderly because order feels safe. But the dreaming mind is freer, and freedom can look like strangeness. Modern science does not treat dreams as prophecies, but it takes seriously the fact that they happen to nearly everyone. When researchers ask people to sleep in laboratories and wake them at different times, most report some form of inner experience, even if it is only a fleeting thought or a small fragment of scene. What changes from person to person and night to night is not whether the mind can dream, but how much of the dream makes it back through the doorway of waking. Most dreams dissolve quickly, not because they were meaningless, but because the brain is already moving on. So tonight, you can let the old questions rest for a while. You don't need to interpret or capture or chase the story. You can simply notice that you are joining a long human tradition where the body becomes still, the world grows quiet, and the mind, in its own soft way, begins to paint with memory and feeling. As the centuries passed, the question shifted from who sent the dream to how does the brain make it? The mystery stayed, but the lantern changed. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, some thinkers treated dreams as windows into hidden wishes and private fears. Their language was often symbolic, and their conclusions could be bold. Yet they helped make one idea ordinary. Dreams were worth studying, not dismissing. Then, in the middle of the 20th century, a quieter revolution arrived, made of wires, ink, and patient nights. Researchers began to record the sleeping brain, tracing its electrical patterns as gently as you might trace ripples on a pond. They noticed that sleep was not a single state, but a sequence. At times, the brain signals slowed into broad waves, and at other times, they became quick and lively, more like waking than anyone expected. In the early 1950s, scientists watching sleepers saw something curious. Beneath closed eyelids, The eyes sometimes darted back and forth, as if following motion in a scene no one else could see. When people were awakened during these periods, they often described vivid dreams. This stage became known as REM sleep for rapid eye movement, and it offered a clear link between the biology of sleep and the felt experience of dreaming. It did not solve the riddle, but it gave the riddle a home. Later work showed that dreams are not limited to REM. People can report dreamlike thoughts from other stages too, though these are often more fragmentary, more like a mood or a memory drifting by. So dreaming is less like a single room you enter and more like a spectrum of inner activity, rising and falling as the night cycles on. The brain moves through different modes, and each mode colors the stories it can produce. One reason dreams can feel so immersive is that parts of the brain involved in emotion and imagery remain active, even while the systems that keep you grounded in logic and time may soften. The result is a world that feels real, but not necessarily reasonable. Tonight, you don't need to hold these facts tightly. Let them sit lightly, like pebbles resting at the bottom of clear water. Chemistry shifts as well. During REM, certain activating signals rise, while others that support steady, deliberate thought can dip. And this changing mix helps explain why dreams can be bright yet hard to direct. Even the sense of self can loosen, because the brain regions that usually keep a firm storyline of me here now are not working in their daytime way. In their place, feeling and image can lead, and the dream becomes more like music than like a report. The important thing is the feeling beneath the science. The sleeping mind is not empty. It is quietly alive, arranging your inner world with a steady, unhurried care. As you continue to drift, the night begins to show its structure even if you never notice it directly. Sleep has a hidden architecture, like a house with rooms you visit in the dark. Early in the night, you spend more time in quieter, deeper stages that researchers call non-REM sleep. The brain's activity slows and synchronizes, and the body settles into a steadier, heavier calm. In these deeper stretches, the brain often produces large, slow waves, rolling across the surface like distant ocean swells. It is a rhythm that suggests restoration, a kind of internal maintenance performed without effort. You may not be dreaming in a cinematic way here, but the mind is not idle. Many scientists think these stages support the careful sorting of memories, deciding what to keep close and what to let fade into the background. Sometimes, in the middle of this slow landscape, brief bursts of faster activity appear. They are called sleep spindles, and on a brain recording, they look like tiny coils of motion, lasting only a second or two. These spindles tend to appear when the brain is protecting sleep from the outside world, as if drawing a soft curtain. At the same time, they seem to be linked to learning, especially the quiet strengthening of things you practice during the day. There are also moments when the brain makes a sudden, solitary shape, like a single waves standing up and then dissolving. Researchers call these K-complexes, and they may be part of how the sleeping brain responds to a sound without fully waking. All of this can sound technical, but it is, at heart, a story of gentleness. The brain does not simply shut off. It changes rhythm, and those rhythms help the whole system stay stable through the night. Sleep tends to move in cycles, often returning to a familiar pattern every hour and a half or so. Early cycles lean toward deep non-REM, while later cycles make more space for REM, as if the night gradually invites more dreaming. As you descend, your body helps the process along. Heart rate and breathing often become more regular, and your temperature can drift slightly downward, making the bed feel like a small pocket of steady warmth. Each of these shifts is a quiet vote for safety. When the body signals again and again that nothing needs immediate attention, the mind is freer to turn inward and wander. In the language of the body, slow waves are like deep breaths, and spindles are like careful stitches. They suggest that sleep is both rest and quiet work, a kind of nighttime craft, and you don't have to do anything for it to happen. Your only task is to lie here, letting gravity hold you, letting thought soften, letting the hours do what hours have always done. Far beneath your waking concerns, patterns repeat and settle, and the mind prepares for another kind of dreaming later, when the tides turn again. When people ask why we dream, they often hope for a single answer, like a neat key that fits every lock. But the sleeping mind is more like a landscape than a machine, and dreams may serve more than one quiet purpose. One leading idea is that dreaming helps the brain work with memory. During sleep, especially across the repeating cycles of the night, the brain seems to revisit recent experiences and weave them into older knowledge, strengthening some connections and loosening others. This may be why a dream can borrow a face from yesterday and place it inside a childhood room. Memory in sleep is not a filing cabinet, it is a living fabric, and dreams can look like the fabric being gently rearranged. Another idea is that dreams help process emotion. Areas of the brain that respond to feeling can remain active during dreaming, and many researchers think the night provides a safer space to rehearse, soften, or reframe what was intense in the day. That does not mean every dream is a message, or that every dream must be decoded. It may simply mean that the brain is learning how to carry emotion without being overwhelmed by it. Some scientists have suggested that dreams can act like simulations, letting the mind practice responses to challenges without real-world consequences. Others propose that dreams are partly the byproduct of the brain maintaining itself, trimming and tuning connections to keep the system efficient. These theories do not cancel one another. They can coexist, the way a garden can be both beautiful and useful, both a place of growth and a place of rest. What is clear is that the brain is not wasting sleep on nothing. Even when you are deeply unaware, Networks are coordinating, hormones are shifting, and the nervous system is balancing itself like a ship adjusting its sails in calm water. And then there is the simplest truth, the one you can feel without any laboratory. Dreams are what happens when the mind is allowed to play with what it knows, without the strict supervision of daytime. Tonight, let that play be gentle. If a scene appears, you don't need to chase it. And if nothing appears, you don't need to worry. People sometimes notice this after waking. When a problem feels slightly lighter, or an idea arrives with less effort than it did before sleep. Studies have shown that sleep can improve learning and sometimes supports insight, even when you cannot recall a single dream. So the benefit may not be in the story itself, but in the quiet reshaping beneath it. The dream is like foam on a wave, and the deeper movement is the tide. The night is still doing its work, and you are still moving softly and surely toward deeper rest. Tonight, you may hover for a while in the doorway between waking and sleep, where thoughts lose their sharp corners. In this place, even ordinary ideas can begin to glow with soft imagery. A face, you know, might appear for a moment, then fade into a pattern of light behind your eyelids. A sentence may start in your mind and end somewhere else, as if the words themselves are getting sleepy. Researchers often call this the hypnagogic state, a gentle transition where the brain is shifting its gears. It is not quite dreaming in the full sense, yet it carries the first hints of dream-making. In these minutes, the brain is easing away from steady external attention and into a more internally driven mode. Waves of activity that were quick and alert can slow toward softer rhythms, the kind that invite drifting. You might notice small sensory surprises too, like a sudden feeling of falling or a tiny jolt as your muscles relax. These are common, and they often arrive when the body releases tension and the nervous system settles into a new rhythm. Some scientists think these jolts are simply the body adjusting to deeper relaxation, like a chair creaking as you sink into it. Others describe them as brief miscommunications during the handover from wakeful control to sleep. The mind, meanwhile, is already learning how to let go of strict continuity. It can stitch together fragments without explaining how they connect. And this is why the earliest dream images can feel both intimate and random. If you hear a distant sound, your brain may register it, decide it is harmless, and then fold it into the drifting imagery. A hum becomes a river, a creak becomes a footstep, a soft voice becomes wind in trees. This is one of the quiet talents of sleep. It protects rest by turning the outside world into something less urgent. Instead of pulling you awake, it sometimes translates the world into dream language. There is no need to watch these transitions closely. The moment you try to hold them, they often slip away, because sleep prefers to be approached without effort. So you can let the doorway remain dim and unexamined. You can let images come and go like lanterns seen from far away. Some people notice brief voices or music in this state, not as a sign of anything wrong, but as the brain experimenting with sound while attention relaxes. It can feel surprisingly real, and then it passes. If you slip for a second into a dreamlet and then surface again, that is also normal. Sleep often approaches in small waves before it finally gathers you. And as you drift further, the mind grows less interested in keeping a tidy record. It becomes content to float, and in that floating, it prepares the deeper, richer dreaming that will arrive in its own time. As the night deepens, dreaming begins to feel less like scattered sparks and more like a moving scene. The mind, now freer from the rules of the day, starts to create a world with its own gentle gravity. When REM sleep arrives, the brain becomes lively in a surprising way. On recordings, the overall pattern can look more like waking, with faster, smaller waves rather than the slow swells of deep sleep. Beneath your eyelids, the eyes may flicker and sweep, as if tracking motion in an unseen room. The brain's visual centers can be active too, helping paint scenes without any light at all. Regions involved in emotion and vivid imagery often stay active in REM. This may be why dreams carry a mood even when the plot makes little sense. A dream can feel tender, urgent, or nostalgic without giving you a clear reason. Feeling can lead, and the story can follow behind, trying to keep up. At the same time, areas that support careful judgment and step-by-step logic can be less active than they are during the day. This softening may help explain why strange events feel acceptable in dreams, as if the mind is more forgiving at night. The brain's chemistry changes as well. During REM, some activating signals rise, while messengers linked to steady reflective control tend to be lower, creating a mix that supports vivid experience without firm direction. You can think of it like a theater with bright lights, but a relaxed usher. The scenes appear easily, yet no one insists that they must be orderly. There is also a quiet safety feature running in the background. During REM, the body's major muscles are largely inhibited, which helps keep you still while the mind wanders. This is why you can run, climb, or fall in a dream without moving across the bed. The brain is letting the inner world unfold while keeping the outer body calm and protected. Breathing can become a little less regular in REM, and the heart may vary in gentle waves, as if responding to the dream's emotional weather. Yet the body remains within safe boundaries, watched over by the same systems that carry you through every night. Not every dream is cinematic, and not every REM period is remembered. But REM does seem to offer a reliable stage for the kind of dreaming that feels like a story. Later in the night, REM periods often become longer, and the mind may spend more time in this vivid mode. It is as if the night gradually invites the dream maker to speak more fully. For now, you can simply rest inside the process. The brain knows how to enter these states without your guidance. And while you sleep, the mind rehearses its quiet art, creating feeling, image, and motion from the soft materials of memory. If you could look closely at dream content, you might notice a familiar pattern. Dreams rarely invent from nothing. They borrow, blend, and reshape what you already carry. A dream might take a recent conversation and place it in a different setting or give it a different ending. A person from years ago may appear wearing the expression of someone you saw today. Researchers sometimes call this the continuity idea, meaning that dreams often reflect waking life, though in a transformed way. The brain seems to sample your days and then remix them as if testing how the pieces might fit. Some scientists also talk about day residue, the small leftovers of ordinary moments that drift into the night. A logo, a street sign, a brief worry, a line of music, all reappearing in softer form. Not all memories are treated equally. Experiences with strong emotion, surprise, or uncertainty are more likely to echo in dreams, even if only as a mood. It can be subtle. A stressful deadline might become a missed train, or a quiet hope might become a warm light in a familiar room. Dreams also seem to pull from deeper archives. Older memories can surface when the brain is linking new experiences to what you have learned before, searching for patterns that make sense across time. Interestingly, some studies suggest a dream lag effect, where certain experiences show up several days later rather than immediately. It is as if the mind waits for the right moment in the night to file a memory into the larger story of you. Some scientists describe sleep as a time when the brain strengthens certain connections and weakens others, shaping memory like a gardener shaping a hedge. In that process, fragments can rise to the surface as images and scenes. This may be why dreams can feel both personal and odd. They are built from your own material, yet arranged by a mind that is not trying to be tidy. There is also a kind of emotional editing that can happen at night. The brain may replay a feeling in a safer form, turning sharp moments into softer symbols, not to hide them, but to carry them more gently. You don't need to chase these links while you listen. In fact, the more you try to pin a dream to a meaning, the more awake you can become. It is enough to know that dreaming is not random noise. It is a quiet form of processing, a soft workshop where memory and emotion are handled with slower hands. And the workshop does not ask for your attention. It continues whether you remember it or not. So, let the mind do what it does best in the dark. Take what you have lived, soften its edges, and weave it into shapes that can pass through the night. The world outside stays still. Inside, the mind rearranges its small collection of days, and in that rearranging, it makes room for rest. Even in deep sleep, the outside world does not disappear completely. It simply becomes less important, filtered through a kind of gentle gate. Your brain continues to monitor sound, temperature, and the feeling of your own body, even while your awareness drifts far away. This is part of how sleep stays safe. Many researchers describe a relay system deep in the brain that helps decide which signals should reach awareness and which should fade into the background. At night, that relay tends to dampen the flow, allowing rest to continue. If a noise is ordinary, the brain may choose to ignore it or translate it into the dream. But if a sound is sharp or meaningful, it can pull you closer to waking, like a hand touching your shoulder. In laboratory studies, people sometimes report that an alarm, a voice, or even a faint rhythm found its way into their dreams. The mind can weave the stimulus into a scene, almost as if it is trying to protect sleep by giving the sound a role. A ringing might become a school bell, a knock might become rain on a window, a distant siren might become a ship passing in fog. This weaving is not perfect, and it does not always work. Sometimes the gate opens wider, and you wake, because the brain decides that attention is needed. Other times, the gate stays mostly closed and the dream adapts. Sleep is flexible in that way, always negotiating between rest and readiness. The body's internal signals can also shape dreams. Hunger, a full bladder, a stuffy nose, or an awkward sleeping position can subtly influence the dream's mood or content, because the brain is still receiving information from within. It may not announce itself directly. Instead, the dream changes tone, as if the weather shifted or the setting grew uncomfortable, nudging you toward a new position or a lighter stage of sleep. This is another reason dreams can feel so fluid. They are not sealed off from life. They are porous, responding to the small currents of the body and the world. Tonight, you can let that porosity feel reassuring. The mind is not leaving you undefended. It is simply resting with one ear half open. And as the night continues, the gate will open and close in small, natural waves. You will move between deeper quiet and lighter drifting, all without needing to steer. In the background, the brain keeps watch. In the foreground, the dream unfolds, turning the world's faint signals into softer shapes. And you remain safely here, supported by the bed, carried by the same gentle rhythm that has carried you through so many nights. Nothing needs to be done. Dreams can feel as if they last a long time, even when only minutes have passed. A whole journey can unfold, complete with places, choices, and conversations, like a small lifetime lived in the dark. During sleep, the brain does not track time in the same steady way it does when you are awake. The sense of sequence can loosen, and the mind can jump forward without showing you the steps in between. This is why a dream can begin in one place and continue in another, with no travel, no explanation, and no surprise. The sleeping mind is not interested in reporting how you arrived. It is interested in the feeling of being there. Scientists who wake people during REM often find that the brain is capable of creating rich narratives quickly. The dream may be composed from fragments that the mind assembles on the spot. then experiences as if it had always been in motion. Sometimes the brain fills in gaps so smoothly that the dream feels continuous, even when it is stitched from separate moments. It is like hearing a melody and accepting the missing notes, because the mind knows how the song should go. When you wake, the story can vanish with startling speed. Many dreams fade within seconds, as if they were written in ink that dissolves in daylight. One reason may be that the brain's memory systems are working differently during dreaming. The chemistry and activity patterns that support stable storage can be altered, making dreams harder to file away as lasting memories. It is also possible that forgetting is part of sleep's design. If every dream stayed vivid all day, the boundary between inner stories and outer life might blur too much, and the mind would feel crowded. So the dream is allowed to be temporary. It can do its quiet work and then release itself, leaving only a trace of mood, like the scent of rain after the clouds have gone. Sometimes you may wake with a single image, a single sentence, or a sense that something important happened, even if you can't say what it was. That feeling is common, and it does not mean you are missing something. It may simply mean the brain has been busy and you caught the edge of its movement. The tide has turned and you felt the water shift. Tonight, you don't need to reach for the disappearing story. Let it pass the way sleep asks it to pass. The night is generous in that way. It offers experiences you don't have to keep, insights you don't have to name, scenes you don't have to explain. And as you settle further, the mind grows comfortable with impermanence. The dream arrives, the dream recedes, and you remain, softly breathing, safely held, drifting on. Sometimes the mind returns to the same kind of dream, not because it is trapped, but because it is practicing. A familiar hallway, a familiar search, a familiar feeling of being unprepared, appearing again in new variations. These are often called recurring dreams, and they can happen in people who otherwise sleep well. The repetition can be the brain's way of revisiting a theme that still carries energy, like a song that keeps playing softly until it is finally learned. In waking life, unfinished tasks and unresolved feelings tend to stay active in the mind. At night, when the usual distractions are gone, those themes can rise more easily, not as perfect memories, but as scenes shaped by emotion. Researchers have noticed that recurring dreams are often more common during periods of stress or change. When life is shifting, the brain may run the same kinds of inner stories, searching for steadiness, the way the body seeks a familiar posture. Across many cultures, people report similar recurring patterns, even when their lives look very different on the surface. A sense of being lost, of being late, of trying to reach a place, of needing to speak and finding no voice, showing up again and again. And yet, recurring does not mean identical. One night, you are searching for a room. Another night, you are searching for a street. And the feeling beneath the search is what remains consistent, like a color that keeps tinting the scene. Some people find that recurring dreams fade when a difficult chapter ends, or when a decision is made, or when rest becomes more regular. It can be as if the mind no longer needs to rehearse the same question. There is also a gentler possibility. Repetition can be a form of learning. Sleep strengthens certain pathways, and the mind may revisit familiar imagery the way it revisits familiar skills, building stability quietly. You might picture the brain turning an object in its hands, feeling the shape from different angles. The dream returns, not to disturb you, but to become less sharp and more familiar. And even if you remember a recurring dream in the morning, you do not have to interpret it. Noticing it is enough, and letting it pass is enough. Tonight, if any familiar scene appears, you can allow it to drift by like a boat on dark water. It does not need your attention to keep moving. The night will keep cycling, and the mind will keep adjusting, and often, without effort, the repeating patterns soften into something quieter. The world slows, and so do we, and the mind continues its gentle work in the background. All is well. Not every dream arrives softly. Some carry a tighter feeling, like a room with the lights turned up too quickly, and you may wake with your heart moving a little faster. Nightmares are more common than people often admit, and they do not mean that something is wrong with you. They can appear in any season of life, and they often come and go, like storms that pass over a quiet sea. Researchers link nightmares to many ordinary things: stress, irregular sleep, certain medications, fever, and even changes in routine. When the nervous system has been running hot during the day, the night can sometimes echo that heat. One idea is that dreaming gives the brain a safe place to work with fear, the way the immune system works with tiny exposures to build resilience. In this view, a nightmare is not a punishment, but a rough draft of emotional learning. During REM sleep, brain regions involved in emotion can be active, while the body is kept still. The mind can replay intense themes without the full physical consequences, which may help feelings become more manageable over time. Still, the experience can be unpleasant, especially when the dream feels vivid. If you wake from a nightmare, the brain's alarm systems may linger for a moment, because the body does not always realize that the danger was only imagined. A gentle reset can happen naturally as you settle again. Breathing slows, the room becomes familiar, and the brain reorients to the present like a compass returning to north. Some people notice nightmares more when they are sleep deprived, because REM sleep can become more concentrated afterward, a phenomenon researchers sometimes call REM rebound. The night tries to reclaim what it missed. There are also night terrors, which are different from nightmares and tend to occur in deeper, non-REM sleep. They can involve sudden arousal and strong fear, yet often with little dream recall, and they are more common in children than adults. Whatever form a difficult night takes, it helps to remember that the brain is not your enemy. It is trying, in its own imperfect way, to balance emotion, memory, and safety. Most people have occasional nightmares, and the pattern often eases when life steadies and sleep becomes consistent. Even a few nights of regular rest can change the tone of dreaming, because the nervous system learns again that it is allowed to settle. Tonight, we are not here to chase the darker scenes. We are here to soften them by understanding that they are made of mind, and mind can change. If a dream turns sharp, it can pass, and you can return to the gentle rhythm beneath it. The night is wide, and there is room for calm to return. And as you listen, you can feel the steady truth of this moment. You are safe, you are resting, and the world outside remains quiet. Sometimes, in the middle of a dream, a small light of awareness turns on. You may realize, quietly and without surprise, that you are dreaming. This is called lucid dreaming, and many people experience it at least once in their lives. For some, it happens rarely, like an unusual weather pattern, and for others, it arrives more often, especially during lighter sleep toward morning. In a lucid dream, the scene may continue, but the relationship to it changes. You might watch the story with a softer distance, noticing that the world is made of imagination, even as it feels vivid. Researchers who study lucid dreaming have found hints that the brain looks slightly different in these moments. Areas linked to self-reflection and monitoring may become more active than they are in typical REM, as if a small part of waking attention has returned. And yet, it is still sleep. The body remains largely still, the dream imagery remains strong, and the emotional tone can still carry you along. Some people also experience sleep paralysis, which can feel unsettling if you do not expect it. It happens when the body's natural stillness of REM lingers briefly as you wake, leaving you aware but unable to move for a short time. This state is usually harmless and tends to pass within seconds or minutes, though it can feel longer. It is another example of the sleep system doing its job, keeping the body still during dreaming, while the timing of waking arrives a little early. Because the mind is half in dream mode, people in sleep paralysis sometimes notice vivid sensations, like a presence in the room or a sound that is not quite real. The brain, still ready to create imagery, is finishing the dream as waking begins. Knowing this can make the experience less frightening. It is not a sign of danger. It is simply a doorway moment, a small overlap between two states. Tonight, you don't need to chase lucidity, and you don't need to fear the edges of waking. Sleep has many textures, and most of them pass through without leaving a mark. If awareness flickers on in a dream, it can be met with gentleness, like noticing the moon through thin cloud. You can let the scene continue, or you can let it fade. The goal here is not control. The goal is rest, and rest comes most easily when you allow the mind to move as it wants to move. So we let dreams be dreams. We let the brain do its quiet switching, and we stay with the steady breath that carries you through every phase. In the end, whether you remember a dream, guide a dream, or never notice one at all, the night still gives you what you came for: softness, repair, and peace. There is a gentle reason dreams can feel inventive. The sleeping brain is allowed to connect ideas that waking life keeps in separate boxes. During the day, the mind often follows the most efficient path. It filters, prioritizes, and stays close to what seems practical. At night, those filters soften, and the brain can wander through its own library in a freer way. Researchers have long been interested in the link between sleep and creativity. Many studies suggest that sleep supports learning, and that after sleep, people can sometimes see patterns more clearly or solve problems with less strain. Part of this may come from how memory is handled at night. Sleep seems to strengthen some associations while weakening others, helping the brain find the gist of what you experienced, not just the details. Dreams can look like that process made visible. A single image might gather many meanings, and a single scene might combine several memories, as if the brain is testing different ways of stitching life together. Sometimes people wake with a phrase, a melody, or a new angle on a problem. It can feel like the mind worked in secret. In truth, the mind did work, but not with the sharp tools of daylight. Even when you do not remember your dreams, sleep can still support this quiet integration. The benefit does not depend on recall, because the deeper processes continue whether the story is saved or lost. This is one reason dreams often feel symbolic without being coded messages. The brain uses metaphor naturally, the way it uses shortcuts, because metaphor is efficient. It can carry feeling and meaning in one small shape. Scientists sometimes describe dreaming as a kind of associative thinking, where one idea triggers another through shared emotion, shared context, or shared memory. The chain can move quickly, and the result can be surprising. Tonight, you don't need to extract anything from your dreams. You don't need to write them down or solve them like puzzles. Sleep is not asking you to perform. You can simply trust that the mind is allowed to rearrange. It is allowed to play. It is allowed to smooth the edges of the day and fold the pieces into something calmer. If an idea appears, it can pass like a firefly. If a scene feels meaningful, it can be meaningful without being explained. The night understands meaning without words. And as you rest, you may feel the relief of that. Not everything has to be analyzed to be held. Some things can simply drift through you softly and leave you lighter. The world slows, the mind loosens, and in the quiet space of sleep, connections are made with gentle hands. To study dreams, scientists have had to be patient and creative, because dreams cannot be collected like stones. They vanish quickly, and they belong to the private theater of the mind. One of the most common tools is the sleep study, where sensors record breathing, muscle tone, eye movement, and the brain's electrical rhythms. This full setup is often called polysomnography, and it lets researchers see which stage of sleep a person is in. In these studies, participants are sometimes awakened at specific moments, especially during REM sleep, and asked to describe what was happening in their mind. The reports can be vivid, fragmentary, emotional, or plain. A clear pattern appears. When people are woken from REM, they tend to report more story-like dreams. And when woken from deeper, non-REM, they may report simpler thoughts or brief images, though dreaming can occur there too. Researchers have also looked for regularities in dream content by collecting many reports over time. They can measure themes, emotions, and social interactions, not to interpret them like fortune tellers, but to understand how the mind organizes experience. There are limitations, of course. The act of waking can change what is remembered, and language can only capture so much. A dream may be richer than the words you can find for it, and many dreams are forgotten before the first sentence arrives. That forgetting is itself a result worth studying, because it hints at how differently memory works during sleep. Newer techniques include brain imaging and careful analysis of patterns in neural activity. Scientists can see that certain networks become more or less active during dreaming, offering clues about emotion, imagery, and self-awareness. Still, no scan can show a dream the way you live it from the inside. The dream remains a personal experience first, and a data point second. Because of this, dream science often advances through gentle probabilities rather than absolute answers. Researchers describe tendencies, averages, and patterns, building understanding slowly. Tonight, it can be soothing to remember that uncertainty is part of the subject. The mind is complex, and sleep is not a single switch. It is a dance of systems, changing minute by minute. So when you hear scientists say, "we think," or "it seems," it does not weaken the story. It reflects honesty, and it leaves room for the wonder that has always surrounded dreams. And you do not need certainty to rest. Your brain knows how to dream without knowing why, and it knows how to sleep without a perfect explanation. As you drift, the questions can float beside you like quiet lanterns, giving a soft light and then fading again into the dark. Dreaming is universal, but dream recall is not. Some people wake with whole stories, while others wake with a blank page, certain they did not dream at all. In many cases, it is not that the dreams are absent. It is that the doorway of memory did not open wide enough for the dream to pass through. Recall is influenced by timing, by sleep stage, and by how quickly the mind turns toward the day. If you wake during or just after a REM period, you're more likely to remember something. If you wake from deep non-REM, the dream may be harder to reach, even if it was there. People also differ in how easily they notice inner experience. Some are naturally more attentive to their thoughts and images, and this trait seems to correlate with higher dream recall. Sleep habits matter too. Irregular schedules, fragmented sleep, and late-night stress can change both the amount of REM and how often you wake briefly, which can increase recall simply by creating more doorway moments. Age plays a role as well. Children often report vivid dreams and nightmares, while adults vary widely, and older adults sometimes describe changes in dream intensity and sleep structure as the body's rhythms shift. There may even be gentle biological differences in how brains transition between stages, how strongly they maintain sleep, and how quickly they move toward waking. Dreaming sits inside those transitions. Culture adds another layer. In some communities, dreams are discussed openly at breakfast, and in others, they are treated as private and quickly forgotten. What we expect to remember can shape what we notice. None of this makes one style better than another. A mind that forgets dreams can still be resting deeply, and a mind that remembers them can still be resting deeply. Tonight, you can release the idea that you should dream in any particular way. The night is not a performance, and sleep is not graded. If you remember a dream, you can hold it lightly, like a smooth stone in your palm. If you remember nothing, you can still trust that sleep has been doing its quiet work. The body continues to regulate temperature, balance hormones, and support the immune system. The brain continues to strengthen learning, steady emotion, and maintain its networks. Dreams are one visible part of that larger process, like waves on the surface. Some nights, the waves are noticeable. Some nights, the surface looks still, and beneath it, the ocean remains alive. So you can settle into your own pattern, whatever it is. The night will meet you there and carry you forward gently toward rest, quietly. It can be comforting to know that dreaming is not only a human experience. Many animals share the same basic architecture of sleep, and that suggests something deep and ancient about the need for nightly inner life. Mammals, from cats to whales, show cycles that include REM-like sleep, with patterns of brain activity and eye movement that resemble our own. Birds also display REM sleep, often in shorter bursts like quick flashes of dreaming. Researchers infer this through careful observation and recordings, because animals cannot describe their dreams in words. Still, the physiology tells a story. The brain enters a mode that looks designed for vivid internal activity. If you have ever watched a dog twitching softly in sleep, paws moving as if running, you have seen a hint of this mystery. The body is mostly still, yet small movements slip through like ripples on a calm surface. In some species, scientists have observed replay of neural patterns during sleep that resemble patterns made during waking activity. It is as if the brain is revisiting the day, practicing, consolidating, and refining. This replay supports the idea that sleep helps memory and learning, not only in humans, but across many creatures. The night becomes a quiet classroom, and the lessons are repeated without effort. REM sleep appears to have evolved long ago, and it likely serves more than one function. It may support emotional regulation, skill learning, and the maintenance of brain networks, all of which would be useful for survival. Yet dreaming is not only about survival, it is also about coherence, the mind's way of keeping the inner world stitched together so waking life feels continuous and stable. In humans, dreams often include social scenes, conversations, and relationships, reflecting how central other people are to our lives. In animals, the content is unknown, but the presence of REM suggests that the brain's need to simulate and process is widespread. Some researchers even explore whether the earliest forms of dreaming were not stories at all, but brief bursts of sensory and motor rehearsal. Over time in humans, this rehearsal may have become richer, layered with language and memory. Tonight, you can imagine sleep as a shared biological ritual. Across homes and forests and oceans, countless minds are turning inward, each in its own way. The planet grows quieter, and living creatures settle into their rhythms. Somewhere, a bird tucks its head beneath a wing. Somewhere, a dolphin rests one hemisphere at a time. Somewhere, a cat curls into warmth and drifts. And here you are as well, part of this gentle pattern carried by the same ancient tide. Whether dreams are remembered or forgotten, they belong to the larger kindness of sleep, a kindness that life has been practicing for a very long time. Because dreams can feel meaningful, it is natural to wonder what they mean. The mind is a pattern finder, and when it encounters a strange story, it reaches for explanation. Across history, many people treated dreams as messages, predictions, or signs. Even today, dream dictionaries promise neat translations, as if every image has a single fixed definition. Modern research does not support that kind of one-to-one decoding. The same symbol can appear for different reasons in different people, because dreams are built from personal memory, emotion, and context. A staircase in a dream might be yesterday's building, a childhood house, a metaphor of effort, or simply a shape the brain used because it fit the scene. The sleeping mind chooses materials for many reasons, not all of them conscious. Dreams often feel symbolic because the brain naturally compresses experience. It represents many details with a single image, the way a thumbnail represents a whole photograph. Compression is efficient, and sleep is full of efficiency. So, a dream can be meaningful without being a secret code. It can reflect a feeling, a concern, a hope, or a memory in motion, without pointing to one clear conclusion. Scientists also caution that we tend to reshape dreams after waking. The story you remember may already be edited, simplified, and arranged into something that makes more sense than the original experience. This does not make dreams less real. It simply reminds us that Remembering is also a kind of dreaming, another act of the mind, creating a narrative from fragments. Tonight, you are not asked to interpret anything. You can give yourself permission to let the dream be what it is, a passing inner weather system. If a dream is pleasant, you can enjoy its softness. If it is strange, you can let it drift. If it is uncomfortable, you can remind yourself that it is made of mind, and mind can change with the next breath. Some people find comfort in simple curiosity instead of explanation. What feeling did it carry, if any? What tone did it leave behind? And then, gently, letting even that question go. The purpose of this episode is not to turn sleep into homework. It is to make sleep feel safe and familiar. Dreams do not need to be solved to be useful. They may be part of memory sorting, emotional balancing, and neural maintenance, all happening quietly beneath awareness. And even if the science continues to evolve, one truth remains steady. Sleep is allowed to be mysterious. You do not have to understand every room in the house to live in it. So tonight, we loosen our grip on meaning. We let the night do what it does, and we return to the simplest thing: rest, breath, and the gentle dark. As the night continues, the cycles keep turning, each one a little different from the last. Deep non-REM comes and goes, and REM returns in softer waves, often lengthening toward the final hours. In the later part of sleep, dreams can become more vivid and story-like for many people, partly because REM periods tend to expand. This is one reason the dreams closest to waking are often the ones you remember. The mind, nearing morning, begins to make a gentle preparation for the day. Hormones that support alertness gradually rise, temperature shifts slightly, and the brain becomes a little more responsive to the outside world. Still, you are not there yet. For now, you are in the middle of the night, slow breathing, and nothing needs to be anticipated. Between cycles, many people have tiny awakenings they never remember, lasting only a few seconds. They are part of the normal rhythm of sleep, like small turns in the night, and the brain usually tucks them away so rest can continue smoothly. If a dream appears, you can let it be like a film playing in another room, the sound turned low. You do not have to follow the plot. You do not have to reach for the ending. A dream can be a simple sensation, a color, a feeling of movement. It can be a conversation that makes no sense, a place that feels familiar without being real, a face that changes like water. And when the dream fades, you can let it fade. Forgetting is not failure. Forgetting is part of how the mind keeps the boundary between night and day clear. It can help to remember that you are not meant to carry everything forward. The brain is already choosing what to keep, what to strengthen, and what to release, like a careful editor working in dim light. In this editing, some memories are reinforced, especially those linked to learning and emotional relevance. Others are softened, blended, or allowed to fall away, making room for new days. The dream itself may be one of the things that falls away, and that is fine. The benefit can remain even when the story is gone, like warmth staying in the bed after you shift. Tonight, you can practice the same kindness toward your own thoughts. If you notice a worry, let it loosen. If you notice a plan, let it dissolve. If you notice an image, let it drift downstream. The world outside is doing less now. Lights are dim, streets are quiet, and even distant machines seem to hum more gently. Inside, the mind is learning the art of release. It is learning that not every thought needs a response. Not every feeling needs a name. And as you sink further into that art, you may feel yourself becoming simpler, quieter, and more at ease. There is time, there is darkness, there is breath, and there is sleep, steady and patient, carrying you along. Toward the end of the night, the mind begins to rise gradually, the way dawn rises, not all at once, but in barely noticeable shifts. Sleep becomes lighter, and the boundary between dreaming and waking grows thinner. This is guided by your circadian rhythm, an internal clock that coordinates the timing of hormones, temperature, and alertness across the day. Even in darkness, the body knows roughly where it is in the cycle. Signals that helped you fall asleep, like melatonin, begin to recede, while other signals that support wakefulness slowly return. The change is gentle, more like a dimmer switch than a sudden light. And still, there is no need to hurry. Rest does not have to be squeezed into perfect efficiency. The body takes what it needs, and the mind follows. If a dream is with you now, you can let it soften at the edges. You can allow the scene to blur, the colors to wash out, the sounds to become distant, as if the dream is already walking away down a quiet street. If there is no dream, there is still the calm awareness of breathing, the steady sense of being held by the bed. There is still the quiet work of sleep happening beneath your notice. Over the night, your brain has moved through cycles, balanced chemistry, tended to memory, and steadied emotion. It has done this without asking you to think, without asking you to try. The mind has told its small stories, not to entertain you, but to process what it carries. It has sorted, stitched, and released, making room inside you for the next day to feel a little clearer. And now, as we come to the gentle end of this journey, you can let everything become simpler. The science can fade into the background. The history can drift away like a shoreline in mist. You are left with the quiet truth of this moment. You are here, you are safe, and you are allowed to rest. If you wake briefly in the hours ahead, that is also part of ordinary sleep. A small sip of wakefulness, a turn of the pillow, and then the mind can slip back into dreaming as easily as it arrived. Let your jaw soften. Let your shoulders sink. Let the muscles around your eyes release, as if they are no longer needed. for anything at all. Thoughts may still arrive, because thoughts are what minds do, but they can arrive like leaves on a slow river, and they can float past without being gathered. Dreams, too, can come and go. You don't have to keep them. You don't have to name them. You can let them be part of the night's weather, passing overhead. The world slows, and so do you. Breathing becomes quieter. Time becomes wider, and the edges of awareness become smooth. And if sleep takes you deeper now, you can simply go with it, as naturally as a tide returning to sea. Good night.